Welcome to Chitku's Classroom.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Chitku's Classroom. So today we are going to learn about the British expansion in India. So the British have ruled India for over 200 years, and India has been struggling with the British for over 200 years. Now we are going to learn how the British came to India. So first the British found a new sea route to enter into India. So the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, and the French all came to India, and there are many wars. And there are many wars in the British expansion of India. So the Carnatic Wars that happened between the French and the British, the Battle of Plassey, the Battle of Buxar, and the Anglo-Mysore Wars, the Anglo-Maratha Wars, the Anglo-Nepali Wars, and the Anglo-Sikh Wars. These are all the wars. So we're going to learn about these wars in detail. We'll learn about finding the new sea route. Why did the British find a new sea route, and how did they find a new sea route? We're going to learn it now. In 15th century, Europeans had trade links with India. So in the 15th century, the Europeans had trade links. So what is the meaning of trade? It's business. So the Europeans want to bring the goods from India to the Europe. So the Europeans would buy things in India, and then they would ship it to Europe to sell them. So spices and other items were bought from India and shipped to Europe. So spices and other items were bought from India and they are shipped to Europe. Spices are used as preservatives and for perfumed oils and to flavor foods. But they had to pass through West Asia, Arabs and Turks. This made the goods very expensive. So they bought things from India and then shipped to Europe. But they had to pass through the West Asian, the Arabs and the Turks. This made the goods very expensive. As it is their country, they made the goods very expensive. So the Europeans wanted to find a sea route to India. So the Europeans want to find a sea route to go to India without passing anyone's countries, so that they can bring their goods in their own ships. So first they want to find a new sea route from Europe to India, so they can keep the goods in their own ship and sail back to Europe to sell those goods. So Christopher Columbus, Ferdinand Magellan, and Vasco da Gama, they all went to find new sea routes. The new sea route was found by Vasco da Gama. So he found a new sea route from Europe to India. The Europeans came to India to buy goods, and when they reach Europe, the goods are more expensive, as they are passing through these countries, and these countries makes the goods very expensive, as the Europeans have to pay taxes for the Arabs, because the spices are passing through their country, so they have to pay taxes. So while they reach to Europe, it is going to be, the goods are very more expensive. So the Europeans, they want to find a new sea route so the goods can be less expensive. So they want to put the goods in their own ships and sail to Europe. So Ferdinand Magellan, Vasco da Gama, and Christopher Columbus all went to find new sea routes, and at last Vasco da Gama found a sea route to go to India. Without passing through these countries. So now we learn about how the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French and the British all came to India. So now let's learn about the coming of the Europeans. So the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French and the British all came to India. So let's see how the Portuguese came first. They were the first to come and settle in India in 16th century. So the British found a new sea route to come to India in 15th century, and in 16th century the Portuguese came to India. They were the first one to come and settle in India. They built their trade centers at Kochi, Kannur and Calicut. So they built their trade centers centers at these places: Kochi, Kannur, and Calicut. They used to trade spices, silk, and gold. They did a trade for spices, silk, and gold. So now we learn about the Dutch. Because of the interest in spice trade, they followed the Portuguese. So as the Portuguese came to India, and the Portuguese and Dutch also followed the Portuguese, and the Dutch also came to India. They were interested in the spice trade. They built their first factory in Masulipatam. So just like the Portuguese, they built their trade centers at Kochi, Kannur, and Calicut. The Dutch built their factories, built their trade centers, built their first factory in Masulipatam, later in Pulikat and Nagapattinam in Tamil Nadu. However, the Dutch and Portuguese could not expand their influence. They had to abandon their trade relationships with India. And Portuguese could not expand the influence, so they had to stop their trade relationships with India. Portuguese came to India and they built their trade centers, and the Dutch came. They followed the Portuguese and they put their factories. So that's how the Portuguese and Dutch came, but they could not trade there because they could not survive. They could not survive in India. That's how they stopped trading in India. We're going to learn about how the British came to India. In 16th century, English East India Company (EEIC) came to India to trade in spices and cotton, just like the Portuguese and the Dutch. In 16th century, the English East India Company, for short EEIC, came to India to trade spices and cotton, just like the Portuguese and Dutch. Later, the EEIC received permission from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir to set up a factory in Surat in 1612. It is textile and shipbuilding factory. So later, the English East India Company received permission from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. So he gave the British permission to set up a factory in Surat in 1612. So that factory is used for making textiles and shipbuilding. It's a shipbuilding factory. So later they established factories at Bhuj, Ahmedabad, Agra, and Masulipatam. So they built all these factories in 1612. They built factories at Bhuj, Ahmedabad, Agra, and Masulipatam. They built all factories in these places. The trading was expanded to Madras, where they were allowed to fortify. So they were allowed to fortify Madras. So what is the meaning of fortify? It means acquiring a piece of land and building a factory, and next building a fort. So they were allowed to fortify Madras. So the fort name was Fort St. George. They built this fort in 1639. Later they acquired Bombay and fortified it in 1668, and then they fortified Calcutta in 1619th century. The fort name was Fort William. This is how the British came to India. They fortified Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta, and they built factories in Surat in 1612 and Bhuj, Ahmedabad, Agra, and Masulipatam. Now we learn about how the French came to India. French and the British were rivals in Europe even before they met in India. So the French and the British were enemies in Europe even before they entered India. So before they entered in India, they were enemies. French traders soon followed EEIC and founded their own trading company in 1664. So the French traders followed. So the British were already in India making huge profits. So the French traders followed the British and they founded their own trading company in 1664. Both British and French engaged in constant battling. So both the British and the French started battle, and the British were fighting for their supremacy. Then the French established the trading in Chandernagore, then in Pondicherry and Mehi. So the French established the trading in these places, in Chandernagore, then in Pondicherry and Mehi. For the control over the Carnatic region in South India, French came in conflict with the EEIC, the British. So for control over the Carnatic region in South India, the French came in conflict with the British. So both the French and the British started their wars. British and the French So the British and the French started fighting over to see who is going to control over the Carnatic region. They were engaged into three wars known as, there were three wars. They are the Anglo-French Wars or the Carnatic Wars. We're going to learn about the wars in the next class. So thanks for watching Chitku's Classroom. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you for watching Chitko's Classroom.